my friends, welcome back. We are going to keep reading The Thief Lord together. The last time we read, Victor snuck into the movie theater and the kids ambushed him, tied him up in the bathroom. So we are going to figure out what happens next. We're picking back up with chapter 21, Baffled. So, what are we going to do with the snoop? Richo asked. Prosper had brought fresh bread for breakfast, but none of them could swallow a single morsel. The only ones who had slept well were Beau and Mosca, whose sleep had remained undisturbed until Richo relieved him. Hornet poured herself a third cup of coffee. Richo was complaining, "So what are we going to do? I haven't slept a wink all night with that guy tied up in the bathroom." Mosca shrugged. "What can we do? We can only let him go once Scipio has found a new hideout. Ship says that with the Conte's money we could buy ourselves our own island on the lagoon if we like." Richo pulled a face. "I don't want to live on an island. I want to stay here, in the city. Do you think I want to go on a wobbly boat every day? Yuck!" Hornet interrupted him impatiently. "Tell that to Scipio." She looked at her watch. "We're meeting him in 2 hours, remember?" "I'd love to live on an island." Mosca pushed himself up with a sigh. "We could catch our own fish, grow vegetables." "Catch fish? Ugh!" Richo wrinkled his nose. "You can eat them if you'd like. I'd never eat a fish from the lagoon. They're all poisoned because the factories on the mainland chuck their garbage into the sea." Yeah, Mosca scowled at him and got up. "I'll take some coffee to our prisoner. Or will he only get water and moldy bread?" "Even that would be too good for him," Richo grumbled. "Why are you all so nice to him? It's his fault we have to find a new place. This is our..." His voice faltered a little. "Our home. The best home we've ever had. And he spoiled it all. And now he gets coffee as a reward?" The others were lost for words. Richo was right. They had all felt safe here, even though the room was scary at night, and it was already so cold they could sometimes see their own breath. But this was their star palace, their shelter from the rain and from the dark night outside. This was their safe haven. At least, that was what they had believed. "We'll find something new," Mosca mumbled when he poured the rest of the coffee into a mug for Victor. "Something just as good, or even better." "Oh yeah?" Richo stared moodily at the star-embroidered curtain. "But I don't want to find something better. Why don't we just chuck him into the canal? Then we wouldn't have to worry. I mean, why was he snooping around here anyway?" "Richo!" Hornet looked at him in horror. "It's true!" Richo's voice grew shrill. He had tears in his eyes. "We're going to lose our star palace just because of that creep. We'll never find another hideout like this. I don't care what Scipio says about an island and lots of money. It's all rotten." The others said nothing. None of them knew what to say. Finally, Mosca murmured, "It's probably going to be really cold in here once winter comes anyway." "So what? It's not going to be as cold in here as it is outside, is it?" Richo sobbed. He buried his face in his arms. "Hey, Richo, it'll be okay," Hornet said. She sat down next to him and put her arm around him. "At least we'll stay together, right?" But Richo just pushed her away. Prosper hadn't said anything all this time, but now he cleared his throat. "You won't have to throw the snope into the canal just to stay here," he said haltingly. "If Beau and I leave, he won't have any reason to come here again. This is all our fault, and so we're going to go. We'll have to anyway, now that our aunt knows we're in Venice." Beau looked at his brother, his mouth open wide. Hornet turned toward him and stared at him in disbelief. "Nonsense!" she shouted. "Where are you going to go? We all belong together. Your problems are our problems." "Exactly," Mosca nodded. "Your problems are our problems. Right, Richo?" He shoved his elbow into his friend's side, but Richo said nothing. "You're staying here, and the snoop stays in the men's bathroom," Hornet continued, "and we'll steal the wooden wing, take it to the Conte, and with his 5 million we'll make ourselves a cozy life on one of the islands. Anyone could get used to riding on boats, I hope," she added quickly. Hornet got just as seasick as Richo. "Then we'll have to feed the tortoise husband," Beau said, "so he doesn't die." "The tortoise husband?" Mosca nearly choked on his cold coffee. He lives under Victor's desk," Prosper mumbled. He was playing absent-mindedly with Beau's plastic fans. "His wife is in a box in the bathroom with Victor. You have to be careful not to step on her when you go in there." Mosca's eyes nearly popped out of his head. "There, you see?" Richo shouted. "Who ever heard of kidnappers looking after the pets of their prisoners? Have you ever seen a movie where the gangster goes on to feed his victim's tortoise or cat?" "We're not gangsters," Hornet cut in, "and that's why we won't let innocent tortoises starve. Go on, Mosca. Take Victor his coffee." Chapter 22, the Casa Spavento. Prosper joined Richo and Hornet when they left to meet Scipio at the Campo Santa Margherita. He hadn't left the hideout for more than 2 days because of Victor, and now he longed for some fresh air. Mosca eagerly agreed to stay behind with their prisoner. He still felt guilty because he had slept through his watch. Beau wanted to look after the lonely tortoise, probably because he really didn't want to walk all the way to Campo Santa Margherita either. It was quite a long way. The square was in Dossoduro, the southernmost quarter of Venice, on the other side of the Grand Canal. The houses there must not have been The houses there might not have been as magnificent or graceful as on some of the other squares in the city, but many had been standing for more than 500 years. It had some small shops, cafes, restaurants, a fish market every morning, and in the center was the newspaper stand where Richo had gained all his information about Ida Spavento. The Campanile Santa Margherita was guarded by a dragon. Richo claimed that once, a long time ago, bear and bull baiting fights used to take place right there at its feet, just like on the Campo San Polo toward the north of the city. The square, which was usually very busy, was almost deserted when the three children entered it. It was a cold and rainy day. The chairs in front of the cafes were empty, and a couple of women pushed their baby carriages past the wet tables. A few old men sat on the benches underneath the bare trees, looking dourly toward the blank gray sky overhead. The house, the target for their nighttime visit, had seen better days. It certainly didn't look like the kind of place that would contain a treasure that was worth 5 million lire. The garden could only be reached through a dark, covered alley, which at first looked like little more than a black hole between the Casa Spavento and the neighboring house. Richo had already explored the alley with Mosca. They had even climbed the wall that surrounded the garden. From there, they had looked down on winter bare flower beds and gravel paths. Richo had wanted Scipio to have a look too, and so they waited. But Scipio didn't come. At first, Richo, Prosper, and Hornet waited patiently at the newsstand. Dogs sniffed them, cats crept past them stalking the fat pigeons, women laden with heavy shopping bags shuffled across the wet pavement. But still, Scipio didn't appear. Strange, Hornet said. She was shivering and moving from one foot to the other to keep warm. He's never been late for a set-up meeting before. Hey, look there. Richo grabbed Hornet by the arm. That's Ida Spavento's housekeeper coming back with the shopping. A fat lady waddled across the square, the leashes of 3 dogs in one hand and 2 overstuffed shopping bags in the other. The dogs yapped at everyone who came near their little snouts. The big lady had to keep pulling them to heel. Here's a piece of good luck, Richo whispered. I don't like those dogs, Hornet breathed. What if they're still in the house when we go in? They're small, but big enough to bite. We can take care of them. Richo smoothed his shaggy hair and gave the others a wink. Wait here. What are you doing? Hornet whispered. Don't be stupid. But Richo was already sauntering across the square whistling. He seemed to be looking everywhere except at Ida Spavento's housekeeper, who was obviously struggling to keep up with her dogs. Watch out, she shouted, but Richo paid her no attention. Just as she steered past him, he stepped right in her way. There was no chance for her to avoid him. They collided. The stuffed bags landed on the square and the dogs ran yapping after the apples and cabbages rolling over the wet cobbles. Hornet whispered to Prosper, What's the hedgehog doing? Richo was running eagerly after the cabbages while the Signora, cursing loudly, bent over to pick up the apples. Now they could hear the fat lady cursing, What the devil were you thinking running into me like that? Scusi, Richo gave her a smile so broad it showed off all his rotten teeth. I'm just looking for the dentist, Dr. Spavento. Is that his house there? Don't be ridiculous, the large lady snapped at him. There's no dentist in there. Mind you, you look like you need one badly. That's the house of Signora Ida Spavento. Now get out of my way before I throw one of those cabbages at you. I'm terribly sorry, Signora. Richo suddenly looked very downtrodden. Even Prosper and Hornet nearly fell for it. May I help you with those bags? Well, now look at that, a real gentleman. The lady tucked a gray strand of hair out of her face. She was already looking slightly more favorably at Richo. But then she frowned again. Hold on, you don't think you're going to earn something out of this, you little rascal? Richo looked sincerely hurt and shook his head vigorously. No way, Signora. All right, then. I might just take you up on your offer. Signora Spavento's housekeeper passed Richo to the shopping bags and wrapped the dog leash tightly around her plump wrist. It's not every day a real gentleman crosses my path. Prosper and Hornet walked after them, keeping a safe distance. They saw Richo vanish into Ida Spavento's house, but not before he had turned around once more to give them a triumphant smile. It took a long time for Richo to come out again, but finally, he stood in the entrance like a little lord at peace with himself and the entire world. He was holding a gigantic ice cream cone that he had received for his labors. He casually pulled the door shut before making his way toward Prosper and Hornet. No bars on the inside, he whispered to them importantly. Not even a second lock. Signora Spavento is definitely not afraid of burglars. Was she at home? Prosper asked him, looking up the balcony above the entrance. I didn't see her. Richo let Hornet lick his ice cream. But the kitchen is exactly where it's marked on the floor plan. I took the bags there for Mrs. Pudgy, the housekeeper, so it's probably also true the main bedroom is in the attic. I tell you, if Signora Ida Spavento really goes to bed early, then this job is going to be easier than stealing candles from a church. Yeah, just don't get too excited, Hornet warned. She looked uneasily at the windows. Wait, it gets even better, Richo chuckled. There's a door that's not on the plan, going straight from the kitchen into the garden. And wait for this. That one doesn't have any bars either. Signora Spavento's really quite careless, isn't she? You're forgetting the dogs again, Hornet replied. What if they don't belong to the housekeeper? And what if they don't like your sausages? All dogs like sausages, right, Prop? Prosper nodded and looked at his watch. It's nearly 1 o'clock, he whispered, and Scipio still isn't here. I hope nothing's happened. They waited for another half hour. Then, feeling very anxious, they made their way to their prisoner's apartment to feed his deserted tortoise. I don't get it, Richo said as they stood in front of Victor's house. What could have happened to Scipio? As they struggled up the steep staircase to Victor's office, Hornet panted. It's probably nothing. He's often late when we arrange to meet at the hideout. But she looked just as worried as the other two. Richo picked Victor's lock. Once inside, they saw that Victor's tortoise husband really looked quite lonely. He hardly poked his head out of his shell when Prosper and Hornet bent over his box. Only when Prosper offered him a lettuce leaf did his wrinkly neck come out. Richo ignored the tortoise. He still thought it was quite ridiculous to look after a prisoner's pets. Instead, he tried out one of Victor's disguises in front of the mirror. Hey, look at this, Prop, he called as he stuck the walrus mustache under his nose. Didn't he have this on his face when you ran into him? Maybe, Prosper answered. He was investigating Victor's desk. Underneath the paperweight lion was a picture of the two tortoises, and next to the typewriter was a pile of densely written paper and an apple with one bite taken out of it. And how do I look now? Richo asked, stroking a full reddish beard. Like a gnome, Hornet answered. She pulled a book from the shelf where Victor kept his well-thumbed crime novels. Then she made herself comfortable on one of the visitors' chairs and settled down to read. Prosper perched on Victor's armchair and rifled through the drawers in his desk. There was nothing interesting, only bits of paper clips, a stamp pad, scissors, keys, postcards, and 3 different bags of candy. Prosper closed all the drawers. Have you seen any files? He's got to have files on his cases. Nope. I bet he became a detective because he likes dressing up. He hasn't got any files. Richo stuck some bushy eyebrows over his eyes, popped a hat on his head, and tried to give his face a dignified expression. Do you think I'll look like this one day when I'm older? He's got to write things down somewhere. Prosper had just discovered Victor's only filing cabinet when the phone rang. Hornet didn't even lift her head. Let it ring, she smiled. It's not going to be for us, is it? 10 minutes later, the phone rang again, just as Prosper discovered a transparent cover with a photograph of him and his brother. Mesmerized, he stared at the photo. Hornet looked up from her book. What is it? Just a photo of Beau and me. My mom took it on my 11th birthday. The phone rang once more, then fell silent again. What did the snoop write down about you? Hornet asked. Prosper put the picture in his jacket and pushed Victor's notes across to her. I can't make it out. Let's see. Hornet put her book aside and leaned over the desk. Well, he doesn't seem to like your aunt either. I think it says a weasel face, and he's called your uncle the wardrobe. Not interested in the older one, she read, probably because he doesn't look like a teddy bear anymore. Hornet smiled at Prosper. No, you definitely don't. He's really not that stupid, our Snoop. The phone rang again. Good heavens, I would never have thought he had so many customers. She grabbed the receiver. Pronto, she said in a low voice. Victor Gutz's office. How can I help you? Richo had to squeeze his hands into his mouth to stop himself from bursting out laughing, but Prosper watched Hornet with a worried expression on his face. What was your name? Hornet gave Prosper a startled sign. Hartlieb? Prosper jumped as if someone had hit him in the face. Hornet pressed a button on the telephone, and Esther's voice shrilled through Victor's office. She didn't talk too fast, and her Italian was very good. I've been trying for days to reach Mr. Getz. He told me he was on the boys' trail. He even told me he would send me a picture he took of the two of them in St. Mark's Square. Hornet gave Prosper a surprised look. I know nothing about that, she stuttered. That, may well have been a misunderstanding. He received some new information yesterday. Brand new. Mr. Getz now believes the boys are no longer here. I mean in Venice. Hello? There was silence at the other end. The 3 children in Victor's office hardly dared breathe. Well, that's all very interesting, Esther's shrill voice replied, but I would really rather receive that information from Mr. Getz himself. Please put me through. Hornet began to stutter. In her panic, she forgot to lower her voice. He's not here. I'm just his secretary. He's out on another case. Who are you? Esther's voice now began to sound irritated. I didn't know Mr. Getz even had a secretary. Of course he has. Hornet sounded truly offended. I don't know what gave you that idea, and Mr. Getz will only tell you what I've just told you. At the moment, he's out. Perhaps you could try again in a week's time. Now listen, whoever you are. Esther's voice cut through the air like a knife. I've already left a message for Mr. Getz on the answering machine, but it can't do any harm to leave it a second time. My husband will be back in Venice on business in 2 days' time. I will meet Mr. Getz on Tuesday in the Hotel Sandworth, 3 o'clock sharp. Good day. Then there was a sharp click on the line. Hornet replaced the receiver, looking miserable. I don't think I did very well, she sighed. We've got to go, said Prosper. He put the files back where he found them. Hornet gave him an anxious look, but then she ran over to Victor's shelf and stuffed a few books under her pullover. Wouldn't it be great if someone really nice was after you like that? Richo pushed his tongue through his tooth gap. Some nice, filthy rich uncle or grandfather, just like in the stories Hornet reads to us. Esther is rich, Prosper said. Really? Richo stuffed Victor's beards into a backpack. He took the fake nose as well. Could you ask her if she'd take me instead of Beau? I'm not much bigger than him, and I don't ask for much, just as long as she doesn't hit me too often. She wouldn't do that, Prosper said as he looked through the drawers once more. What photograph was she talking about? I knew he had photographed Beau feeding the pigeons. Richo, take the camera. Maybe the picture's still in there. Richo hung the camera around his neck and stood once more in front of Victor's mirror. Buongiorno, Signora Esther, he said, smiling and tightly closing his mouth so no one could see his bad teeth. Would you like to be my mother? I hear you don't hit children, and you have lots of money. Forget it, Hornet said to him as she looked over his shoulder. Prosper's aunt wants a little teddy bear, not a hedgehog with bad teeth. Come on, let's get out of here. We'll take the tortoise with us since the Snoop is our prisoner. Maybe Scipio has already turned up at the hideout, Richo said hopefully as they pulled Victor's door shut. Perhaps, Prosper replied, but none of them really believed it. And that's where we're going to stop for today. So, what do you guys think happened to Scipio? Do you think maybe his father found out something? I don't know. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video and we will keep reading and find out together. Bye, guys.